Muy buenos días a todos. Good morning, everybody. Yo sé que siempre es un placer poder regresar aquí a esta iglesia, en donde he tenido bastantes lindas memorias y conocí a bastante gente linda, gente de Dios, que ama a Dios, ama al pueblo de Dios, y es un placer poder estar aquí nuevamente. Y sé que somos una iglesia hispana, pero por este momento, por este día, por la gente que está aquí y para que la mayoría pueda entender, voy a tener mi sermón en inglés. Pero les prometo que mi tema es simple, es sencillo y van a poder seguir conmigo en el tema con los versículos porque van a estar en la pantalla, en inglés y en español también. So this morning I'll be sharing a message that I've titled Decisions. And the importance of decisions. Now, I want you to think about for a moment, and if I can get my presentation up there. I want you to imagine for a moment that this picture that you're seeing right now represents your life. It represents you in that boat, and the ocean, the open waters, represents life. A world of endless opportunities and decisions that you can make, and plenty of places where your journey can take you. But if you were that boat, how do you move? How do you choose the direction? Well, the way that you choose a direction is by steering this wheel either to the left, to the right, or keeping it in place. Decisions to go left, or decisions to go right, or decisions to go straight ahead determine your direction. My simple point that I want you to remember throughout this entire sermon is this particular point. Decisions determine direction. Can you say that with me? Together. Decisions determine direction. What does that mean? It means that the decisions that you make in life are so important. And every decision that you make, someone said it this way: our life is made up of choices that we make, and the choices that we make you. Alguien dijo una vez, cada decisión que hacemos en nuestra vida, al final de nuestra vida, esas decisiones nos han hecho a nosotros. Every choice that you make in life makes you, because your decisions matter. Your decisions determine your direction. And today we have witnessed a family that decided to point their child in the direction of Jesus, right? Through this baby dedication that we just saw. A family that made a decision that says, you know, the world tells me go this direction, but the word of God and the love of Jesus is pulling me into another direction, and I'm deciding today to dedicate my child. And it was a beautiful thing to see that. But not only that, today we have a young person who has made a decision to say, you know what? There is so much that the world offers. There are so much things that social media is trying to pull me in its direction. There are so many friends, maybe even in my school, that have so many different opinions that they may want to influence me to a certain direction. But today, a young person named Emilia is making the decision to walk in the direction of Jesus Christ. Amen? And that is a beautiful thing. And it's so important because it starts with a decision. Our direction and ultimately our destination begins with a decision. And so because we have a young person making a decision for Jesus today, I thought, why not go to the Bible to see another young person who made important decisions and learn from that person? This person was actually a king that you find in the book of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. So let's open up the Word of God today, and we're going to look at the story of King Josiah. But before we get to King Josiah, let's backtrack a few kings before him. Abramos nuestra Biblia al libro de Segunda de Reyes, capítulo 18, versículo 1 al 3. Vamos a ver, antes de llegar al rey Josías, vamos a ver algunos reyes antes y las decisiones que ellos hicieron. ¿Y qué dirección las llevó a esas decisiones que ellos hicieron? We're going to look at a few kings and the decisions that they made and the direction those decisions took them. So 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 1 to 3. We're going to read about King Hezekiah. And it says, in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and I want you to catch this, just as his father David had done. Now here's the interesting thing. We have this king by the name of Hezekiah, and he makes a decision. I want to do what is right in the eyes of the Lord. Tenemos un rey que hace la decisión en su vida al inicio de su reino y dice, quiero decidir hacer lo correcto para honrar y glorificar el nombre de Dios. But it's interesting where it says, just as his father David had done. Now, David was not his father. David was actually more like his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. But why does the Bible say, just as his father David had done? Well, because the decision that Hezekiah made to do what was right and his connection with his ancestor David was trying to say, I am chasing after God's own heart. I want to do what my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather David did and follow after the Lord. I want to make a decision for him. And the Bible continues to tell us that Hezekiah reigned, but then finally came his time for his life to end. And it says, Hezekiah rested with his ancestors, and Manasseh, his son, succeeded him as king. So here we get the next king, Manasseh. We hear about him in 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 1 to 5. Look what this one says, though. It says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. Did he make the same decision that his father made? No. Completely different. His father Hezekiah said, I have made a decision in my heart to do what is right for the Lord. Here comes Manasseh and he says, nah, I don't want to do that. Not a fan. I want to do something different. I want to follow the detestable practices of the nations that the Lord has driven out. I want to go back to what it used to be like before the Lord came in. Doesn't mention anything about his father David because he doesn't associate with following after God's own heart. It continues on to say that he rebuilt the high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal and made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, in Jerusalem, I will put my name. These are all the things that he did. Not only that, look at this. In the 2 courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. He sacrificed his own son in the fire, practiced divination, sought omens, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, arousing his anger. In other versions, it says, provoking the Lord. So here you have 2 different kings that have made 2 different decisions. One king who says, I want to do what's right. And then his son says, I don't want to do that. Even though he had the example of his father, he chose something else. But then comes the next king. 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 19 to 23. Amon, the son of Manasseh. Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem only 2 years. His mother's name was Meshullemeth, daughter of Haruz. He was the son of Jotbah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. He followed completely the ways of his father, worshipping the idols his father had worshipped and bowing down to them. He forsook the Lord, the God of his ancestors, and he did not walk in obedience to him. Amon's officials conspired against him and assassinated the king in his palace. Here we got 3 kings so far. Hezekiah makes a decision. I want to follow the Lord. The next child has good example from his father, but he makes a different decision. I want to do my own thing. I want to go back to a different kind of living. And his son Amon follows his wicked father, but they are making decisions which is leading them down this direction. But now we get to the king at hand. 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 1 and 2 says this. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. Anybody here 8 years old? My son is 8 years old. Anyone else is 8? Imagine becoming king at the ripe age of 8 years old. And Josiah becomes king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah, and she was from Bozkath. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and followed completely the ways of his father David. You get that phrase again. Not turning aside to the right or to the left. And I ask myself, how is it that one person can make a decision for God, give example to his children, but then it's a different story in the next 2 generations. And then in the 4th generation that we're seeing now we're seeing decisions made for the Lord, because the direction of our lives is based on the decisions that we make. God has given us a freedom of choice, but with that, we need to steward that properly. We need to make the right decisions to be able to go in the right direction. But was it just a decision that Josiah made once? No. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 3. It says, in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young. Let's do a bit of maths. How old was he when he became king? ¿Cuántos años tenía Josías cuando fue rey? 8. And now 8 years during his reign, how old is he now? He's 16. In the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the Lord, the God of his father. In his 12th year, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of high places, Asherah poles, and idols. So Josiah doesn't just make the decision once, and that guides his whole direction. Josiah makes a decision to constantly seek after God day after day. Years after he's made that decision, he's still making that decision, and it leads him to action. So the question is, if we think about this, if our decisions determine our direction, and it's all about the decisions that we make, whether we steer to the left, to the right, what decisions can we make? What is significant about these 4 generations? Here's the first thing that I want to say to you. Could Josiah have chosen to do the wrong thing? Yes or no? Yes. But he chose to break the cycle of bad decisions. Here's the thing that I find fascinating about this story. 2 generations before, the kings have been wicked. Josiah has heard about it. Josiah has seen it through his own father. Josiah could have said, hey, this is my environment that I grew up in. We'll just keep doing what my parents did, right? But Josiah doesn't do that. Josiah says, you know what? I want to break this bad cycle that we are a part of. Because even though the direction where Josiah was most likely going to lead because of his example, his decision turned it around. The decision to break the cycle and to not blame your environment is so important. But so many times we say, well, I can't help it. This was just the family I was brought into. This is just the environment that I'm in. This is just my experience that I've had. What else do you expect? But I want to challenge us today that we cannot let our environment or our past or the things that are external to us determine our direction, because it is still in the power that God has given you through your freedom of choice to make the decision for Him, no matter what situation we are in, just like Josiah did. Here's the thing. With Josiah, here's one more thing that I want to share with as we start getting ready to make a few points and wrap up. Manasseh reigned for 55 years, a long time to do a lot of wicked things. And Amon had his example for 22 years before he became king, right? He had a lot of example to see. Maybe the thing that saved Josiah, even though he had that example, Amon only reigned 2 years at the age while Josiah was 6 to 8 years old. So maybe he didn't have as much influence. But there's this author that I love, her name's Ellen G. White, and this book that I love to read, it's called Prophets and Kings. In chapter 32 of this particular book, she gives us insights about what helped Josiah make the right decisions in his life. And she writes this: born of a wicked king, beset with temptations to follow in his father's steps. In other words, he was destined basically to do the wrong things his father did. And it says, and with few counselors to encourage him in the right way. Didn't have a lot of people teaching him the right thing, but he had a few. It says, Josiah nevertheless was true to the God of Israel. Warned by the errors of past generations, he chose to do right, instead of descending to the low level of sin and degradation to which his father and his grandfather had fallen. Here's a really interesting thing. Josiah was warned. Who warned him? He must have had good people around him. She writes that not a lot, but a few that taught him to do the right thing. And there was somebody else in tradition, in the Jewish tradition, that we need to focus on in this story. 2 Kings 22 verse 1 to 2. Do you remember what we read about the mother of Josiah? Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah. She was from Bozkath, a place that was known in Judah to be a spiritual place. And she probably had some good spiritual roots in her life by her own family. And in a time when names were so important, the name Jedidah actually means this. El nombre de la madre de Josías significa la amada de Jehová. Her name means the darling of Jehovah, giving us an indication that she was probably a committed follower of God, who was probably the main person that taught her child Josiah not to follow in the ways of his wicked father, but to do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. So much so that Jewish tradition actually tells us this quote about the mother, which I love. Jedidah was a mother who reared the greatest king who ever sat upon the throne of Judah. She planted the seed of a mother's faith, watered it with a mother's tears, fertilized it with a mother's prayers, and reared a son who saved the nation. Why do I share this with you? Because if our life is this journey of endless possibilities and directions that we can take, and the decisions that we make are important, there's a personal choice that all of us need to make, but there are also people around us that can help us, lead us the right way too. In the life of Josiah, he made a decision. It began with him, or he made the decision that would begin the right direction, but he had good people around him and a loving mother who showed him the ways of God. So I want to speak to all the parents for a moment. Do not ever underestimate the power that you have to steer your children in the ways of the Lord. A toda madre y padre que está aquí, abuelo y abuela, no subestimemos el poder que nuestra influencia puede tener sobre nuestros hijos. No pensemos que, dejemos que el Señor los cuide nomás, o que el pastor de la iglesia, o que la maestra de la escuela sabática. No olvidemos la responsabilidad que Dios nos ha dado a nosotros, a enseñarle los caminos de Dios a nuestros hijos y a nuestras hijas. Porque en la historia de Josías vemos el poder que tuvo la crianza de este hijo por medio de su madre. In the story of Josiah, we see the power of a mother's prayers, a power of a mother's influence, the power of a few good counselors around that allowed Josiah to make that decision for God. And I believe today that in this journey that we are going through, and the reason I'm sharing this message, once again, is because we have a young person who has had good people in her life. She's had her church. She's had her chaplain and her teachers at Hurstville Adventist School. And more important than that, she's had her parents, Jocelyn and Juan, and grandparents and aunties and uncles who have guided her to be able to make this decision. But, Emmy, did they make the decision for you? No, they didn't, did they? And I can vouch for that because, there was even a little bit of hesitation. Is she ready? Is it going to happen? Because it was something that was never forced upon Amelia. She made the decision when she saw some of her young friends get baptized or other young people get baptized at church. She stood up. And I remember that day. Because I remember Jocelyn's tears after. Of course, the tears of a happy mother. But the decision you have made, Amelia, today is your own personal decision. But it has also been because you have a loving family that has led you to make that choice. You have a loving church. You have loving staff members at Hurstville Adventist School. You have wonderful pathfinders, friends, and other people that have been a part of your journey. But it is still your decision to make. And it is because of the grace of God that you have made that decision. And we're very proud of the decision that you've made, Emmy. But just like we said, decisions determine our direction. There are going to be moments in life, Emmy, where it's not going to feel like we saw in the picture before, the still waters. There's going to be moments where the waves are going to crash. It's going to be moments where there's going to be storms in life. But you can still make that decision to continue to follow Jesus in the right direction. And don't forget who is in that boat with you when that storm is there. Just like Jesus was there with his disciples and ultimately calmed the storm. But even if the storm wasn't calm, Jesus was still there. No matter what we go through, the decision that you've made today, keep making it every day. Just like Josiah. He made it at the age of 8, but then at the age of 16, then 20, and the rest of his life kept making a decision for Jesus. So I want to encourage you, Amelia, to keep making that decision for him each and every day. And I want to encourage everybody here to make this decision for Jesus. What direction is your life going through right now? Or what direction is your life pointing to right now? And if it's not completely pointed to the direction of Christ, I encourage you that you can make that decision today. It's never too late. There's no prerequisite. There is no list that you have to tick off and now you can make that decision for Jesus. Jesus says, no, come and follow me right now. Choose me right now. He is here waiting for you. So may the Lord bless you, Amelia. May the Lord bless everyone here so that we can make that decision for Jesus. So that we can identify with our father David, the one who is known as a man after God's own heart, because we are chasing after God's own heart. May the Lord bless us. May the Lord guide us. And may he continue to steer us into the direction of Jesus based on the decisions that we make each and every day. May God bless you.